Hey students, Mr. McDonald here, and what I have for you is just a short lesson in addition to what we had during our normal class period because we only have 3 days a week. It's really hard to get all the important information to you guys. So this is just a short lesson. Consider this basically a class lesson. What I want you to do is take some notes on this, and at the end of the video, there's going to be a short quiz, and you can use your notes on the quiz for a homework grade. So, what I want to talk to you guys about today is the nature of knowledge. I'm going to shrink myself here real quick. Ah, what is knowledge? So, it's a word that we always use, but what does it mean to have knowledge? How do you know that you know something? Well, believe it or not, a lot of people have thought about this over the years. And so, what I wanted to do was go over it in a way that you guys could understand. Where am I at? I don't know. Let me get out of here. All right, there we go. So, there is a definition to knowledge, and there are very important factors to consider if you want to say you know something. There are different ways to know things. Like, for example, you can know a person, like an acquaintance type of way. You can know a place if you've been there and things like that. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is like propositional knowledge. Someone makes a factual claim or they state something that you perhaps didn't know in the past, and you have to choose whether you believe it or not. And if you believe it, whether it is actual knowledge or not. And this is very important in learning how to think well. So let me go over the definition of knowledge for you. Knowledge is justified, true belief. This is called the standard view of knowledge. There are other views. In philosophy, there's lots and lots of different views because it's a 4,000-year-old subject and people have been thinking for a long time. But this is the most popular and pretty much the most common sense view. In fact, I think some people call it the common sense view of knowledge. Each of these three components are necessary for someone to say that they truly know something. So we're going to quickly analyze each part and then put them all together and see how it relates to knowledge. So let's start backwards. Let's go with belief. So what is belief? Belief means that you believe something, that you actually trust or have faith that it is true. Perhaps the truth is out there and there is a lot of justification. There's a lot of good evidence for it. If you doubt it, you don't really know it. I could tell you that the tide is caused by gravitational pull of the moon and the sun. Technically, it's because there's two tides. But let's just go with the moon. The tide is caused by the moon. Well, there's a lot of evidence we can show you in science, but if you just don't believe it, then no one can do anything. You don't know it. Now, if someone gives you something that's true, along with really good evidence to support it, and you choose to doubt it anyway, you are in what is called denial. The evidence was presented to you, the facts were presented to you, and you just chose not to believe it because maybe there's an alternative motive, maybe you don't want to, maybe you like living in your own delusion or ignorance, who knows? But if you don't really believe it, you can't know it. That's just common sense, right? Let's look at the second one. It has to be true. Not that you think something's true. It literally has to be actually true in the metaphysical sense, in the reality sense. Okay? To know something, the information must be true. Perhaps you believe something and have a justification for it. If it's not true, you don't really know it. You knew a lie. A lot of these are fallacies. The fallacy we're going to talk about later is if you think that you have good evidence to believe something, but that evidence is actually faulty. That's called a fallacy. So, do you like believing lies? I don't like believing lies. So, if you thought you knew something or you had knowledge, but it turns out that it wasn't true, you didn't really have knowledge. You had false knowledge, whatever you would call that. If someone gives you a false proposition along with evidence to support it, and you choose to believe it, and I misspelled believe there, thank you. Just fix that now before I forget for the rest of my life. And you choose to believe it, you are mistaken. You're just wrong. That's all there is to it. So that's what it means to be wrong, is if someone gave you evidence for something, you believed it, but it was not true. So, you know, there's tons of examples that we could think for something like this. If I tell you that every time a black cat walks by, Someone falls off a ladder, and that's because I saw a black cat walk by and a guy fell off a ladder, right? So that means every time that happens, the next event's going to take place. Actually, that's a fallacy. It's called a post hoc fallacy. That is not what actually happens next. They didn't cause each other, they're unrelated. So I had evidence, though. I gave you a justification for it. It simply just wasn't true. So it wasn't really knowledge. It was nonsense, mistaken, wrong. The last one is justification. To know something, you have to have a good reason to know it. And you might say, well, isn't it just something that should be true and something that you believe? Not so, because you can actually believe things that are true and have no idea why. And in that case, if you don't really know it, in that case, it's sort of like a lucky guess, or you could just say a naive knowledge. To know something, you must have a good reason. Perhaps you believe something and it happens to be true. If you don't have a justification or good evidence to believe it, you don't really know it. If someone gives you a proposition and you believe it without a justification and it happens to be true, you've basically made a lucky guess. So let's say I believe that the Cardinals are going to win the World Series this year. This is a future event. Now, I might just say that because perhaps I just have an affinity towards that team. It's not really good evidence. It's not a really good justification. If they happen to win the World Series, it wasn't that I had knowledge that they were going to win or an educated guess, if you will. It was just a lucky guess. I just threw that team out there and guessed upon it, and that's where it landed. But I didn't have a real justification in between. You can have good justification or bad justification. And justification is very key because we all believe things. And what we want to make sure is that we believe things that are actually knowledge, that we're actually learning something, we're being educated. So, what I want you to do when you learn something is ask yourself these three key things. Do I really believe this? Is it true? And is there a justification? Does it make sense? And start thinking these types of things through. Start breaking it down. That's how you really start learning. That's how you become intelligent. And then here's a graph for you graph people, which is me. You have the truth circle, you have the justification circle, and the belief circle. If you have belief and truth, it's just a lucky guess. If you have truth and justification, it's just denial because you don't really believe it. If you have belief and justification, but it's not true, it's mistaken. You have to have all three to have a justified true belief in order to have what is commonly called knowledge. And this is the standard view of knowledge. This is Epistemology 101. Good job. I'll see you on Tuesday. I hope that you don't get overwhelmed with homework. Make sure that you spread it out, and see you then. Bye bye.